and it will be the
Federal Executive Council approves contract for construction of road linking Enugu and Benue states.
A day after releasing 2019 elections timetable, INEC issued certificates to 21 new political parties.
Inspector General of Police meets stakeholders in Benue, assures the culprits of recent killings will be fished out.
And Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall focus on the prospects for the extractive industry in 2018.
Now, Nigeria's extractive industry is dominated by the oil and gas sector, which accounts for over 70% of government's revenue.
Now, this is in spite of the fact that Nigeria has other mineral resources such as coal, tin, iron ore, limestone, and gold, among others, that have commercial viability.
And of course, Kingsley, the truth is that the country is paying the price for over-dependence on oil. With recent recession, it has just exited and has decided to look more on other areas of the extractive industry, such as the mining.
That's right, Rhoda. Now, the mining sector has been undergoing reforms in order to reposition it for greater contribution to the nation's economy. And such efforts have started paying off as more revenue is being generated. In fact, in the course of the recession, there were two subsectors that did very well in terms of posting positive numbers, growth figures: agriculture and mining.
While the mining sector is undergoing a revival, the search for oil around the country is still ongoing, and in fact it is expanding. Apart from the Lake Chad oil search, there are prospecting activities around the Sokoto Basin and of course the Benue through the Niger Basin.
That's right. Now, the nation is, however, stuck, as it were, with the importation of petroleum products. And the recent fuel scarcity is a testimony to the challenges with the downstream sector of the oil industry.
Well, the state of the existing refineries is also not cheering, as their production capacity is very low compared to the nation's needs. Why have the refining licenses issued over the years been dormant?
And on a general note, what is the outlook for the extractive industry in Nigeria this year, 2018? And what are the expectations and challenges? Who needs to do what and when? And to what extent can mining and oil extraction continue to help the nation consolidate its exit from economic recession?
These are some of the questions we shall be raising today on Good Morning Nigeria as we look at the prospects for the extractive industry in 2018 with specific references to mining and the oil sector. I'm Rhoda Anonam, and it's good to be with you on Good Morning Nigeria today.
I'm Kingsley Osadolo. I also join Rhoda in appreciating your tuning in to the program today. As always, we're live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. In the course of the program, we shall also bring you some of our companion segments, and these, of course, include newspaper review, business, and others. So in the meantime, let's join our colleague, Ogwa Vivian Oyedibe, for the morning news. Hi, Vivian.
Hi, Kingsley. Good morning and welcome to the news. The Federal Executive Council has approved over 5.4 billion naira contract for the construction of a critical road infrastructure linking Enugu and Benue states. This is in furtherance of the government's commitment towards addressing the infrastructural deficit in the country.
It's a major agrarian
connectivity in support of our agricultural policy. So Council approved that memorandum. The award was to the existing contractor who is already working on the Benue section, so we should have a seamless deployment of machine and materials to site. We expect that this should be completed in 24 months. Contract sum is 5.44 billion naira.
Meanwhile, Vice President Yemi Osinbajo says the federal government is working with states to promote values of good character, innovation and enterprise so as to ensure that more businesses thrive in the country. The Vice President said this while addressing participants at the Southwest Regional Youth Summit in Osogbo.
No values, no plan works. If there are no values, society does not work. And values are the fundamental principles of any society. In our culture, the Yoruba culture.
The Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, has issued certificates to the 21 newly registered political parties. This formally makes their transition from political associations to political parties. INEC Chairman Professor Mahmoud Yakubu presented the certificates to the representatives of the new political parties.
You must add value to our democracy by adhering to the tenets of democratic norms anchored on the rule of law. In electing your officials as well as candidates for various elective positions, ensure free and transparent processes.
And to security matters now, the Inspector General of Police, Ibrahim Idris, on the directive of President Muhammadu Buhari, has held a meeting with stakeholders in Benue State towards finding lasting solution to conflicts, especially in the wake of the recent crisis that led to the loss of lives in Logo and Guma local government areas of the state. And still on security, there is a common saying that no ill-gotten wealth lasts forever, and that such money is cursed. This best describes the situation, the case of Johnson Igwedibia, popularly known as Don Wani. His palatial estate worth hundreds of millions of naira in Omok has been leveled to the ground on the order of government.
Taking to evil deeds will never last forever. It's an eye-opener to all of us.
That has happened to his house, his property, or whatever there, is the consequence of what he did.
Either confiscate the house, make use of it, since it was closest to the river there. They never would have used their, what do you call it, the flying boat to either parade the creeks, to knowing the sort of criminals that come into the town.
And moving on to the judiciary now, the Federal High Court sitting in Abuja is to decide if INEC is to go ahead with the Anambra Central Senatorial election on Saturday. The court has fixed Friday 12th for that decision following an application by INEC for clarification on the election. And that's the news for now. Good morning, Nigeria. We'll be back with Rhoda and Kingsley after this break.
Unemployment, notably youth unemployment, features strongly in our party's manifesto. We intend to attack the problem promptly through revival of agriculture.
The 30K is going a long way. Actually, I bought an acre of land for 60K like 2012, and presently I have a cassava farm and a yam farm.
reorganized, trained, and fully equipped. We are the new improved Nigeria Police Force. We fight crime. We bust syndicates. Whatever the crime, wherever the hideout, the Nigeria Police Force will get you busted. Stop kidnapping, armed robbery, murder, pipeline vandalism, and other criminal activities. Be productive. Be security conscious. Join the police force to secure your life and property. This message is from the Nigeria Police Force Public Relations Department.
Imagine a nation where tribalism and ethnic groups cease to be the mainstay of our reasoning.
Are you not an Igbo boy?
Of course, yeah.
Why then are you talking about proposing to a Yoruba girl? Or are you out of your senses?
If you are in Benin and your nephews are Ijo, will you kill them?
If I see two people from different tribes together, I don't like it. Cha-cha!
Let us marry ourselves and make our nation great.
Where they come from doesn't matter. What matters is how they feel towards each other.
We are getting there, but a lot still needs to be done. So we at Professor John Bull have found the perfect solution in this episode titled Saving Nigeria, and laugh like never before.
If I can't give you some cash, you say make you dash me some cash for my phone where I never flash because my economy crash, eh? You go give me?
Now they thought this is not a flash, they talk inside you.
That's what it is.
Over and out.
Brought to you by Glow,
the largest data network. Glow Unlimited.
Hate speech is not a joke. It incites genocide and crimes against humanity. Most of Africa's civil wars are caused by hate speech from one tribe against another. We don't want it here. The Nigerian government stands firm against hate speech.
I was distressed to notice that some of the comments, especially in the social media, have crossed our national red lines by daring to question our collective existence as a nation. This is a step too far.
One nation bound in freedom, peace and unity.
Nigeria, one nation, one people.
This is a public service announcement brought to you by NTA.
The Federal Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment, in collaboration with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture, the Made in Nigeria campaign. In the midst of unprecedented multiple challenges, our great country Nigeria, as Africa's largest economy, is surely marching on to a new era of all-round prosperity, especially through re-engineered and diversified economy, powerfully driven by the change agenda of President Muhammadu Buhari, GCFR.
We will patronize local entrepreneurs. We will promote the manufacturing powerhouses. Our objective is to make Nigeria a new manufacturing hub.
It is not time to complain. It is time to join the campaign. It is time for economic recovery, growth and diversification of our economy by Made in Nigeria.
Welcome back. It's Good Morning Nigeria on the NTA. Now let's bring you up to date in the world of business as experts speak on high expectation for Nigeria's economic growth after recession. Plus, Nigeria's Stock Exchange All-Share Index closed Wednesday's trading positively. We'll join Kolo Mohammed on the Business News segment.
Hello, good morning, and as always, thank you for joining us on Business News. The Economic Recovery and Growth Plan was a result of far-reaching consultations, especially with state governors, the National Assembly, commissioners of budget and planning, development partners, and especially the private sector. The plan was put to test in 2017, and its first clause of recovery pulled the nation out of recession. The Minister of Budget and National Planning gives some executive perspective.
And the collapse of the oil price without any buffers left us with a very difficult situation. But we faced it head on. The difficult situation led to the recession. And we developed the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan as a mechanism to, one, get us out of the recession, but more importantly, to restructure the economy and set us on a path of growth.
The second clause of growth is about to be put to test as expectations are high regarding the aftermath of recession. True, the national economy has been given some buffers as most indicators looked up from the second quarter of 2017. Then the question, what is in all these for the citizens, especially the civil and public servants alongside their families? To these, the government says an answer is only some time away as a new national minimum wage is being worked out.
Well, the issue of minimum wage, you can say, can be a compassionate move by government to improve the living standards of the poor, because minimum wage applies to people with low skills. But being compassionate is not enough, because you have also to think of sustainability. If, for instance, I'm producing a product where the contribution of the low-skilled laborer that's working with me is, say, of 10,000 value in a month, and then a legislation comes out of Abuja that now says that I have to pay that laborer 18,000. As a producer, I will be forced to produce less number of that product because the cost of production has increased. And because of that, I will produce, as I said, less number of it, and therefore less number of it will be available for sale. And if less number of a product, if a reduced number of a product is available for sale, it means that the price of that product will go up.
And in the 12 months through to September of 2017, gross flows into the Federation account amounted to 3.51 trillion from oil revenue and 2.63 trillion from non-oil revenue. Over the period, oil revenue was the higher of the two in 10 months and non-oil revenue in just 2. The gap was smaller in 2016. It widened in the more recent period because the recovery in oil output pushed up oil revenues considerably in July, August, and September of 2017. And diplomacy in the Niger Delta has paid off for the federal government of Nigeria. Essentially, the economy recovered and growth is imminent, according to the World Bank and IMF. And finally, on Wednesday, the equities market traded towards the bullish sentiment as NSE All-Share Index appreciated. Here now is a graphic summary of market trends on Wednesday. That's business news for this time. Good Morning Nigeria continues in just a moment. Many thanks for your time.
Thank you very much, Kolo Mohammed, for the business news update. The newspaper review is up next.
Our newspaper reviewer, Bayo Otoyebe, is right here with us for today's edition of the review segment. Bayo, morning and welcome.
Morning, Kinsley. Good morning, Rhoda. And good morning, Nigeria.
All right. Rhoda, let's begin with you. There are stories. We have the story on the herdsmen farmers clashes. Those stories continue to trend on the front pages of some of the papers that we have this morning. Now, let's begin with the leadership. The leadership has that story as its lead. It says, IGP, that is Inspector General of Police, vows to arrest and prosecute Benue killer headsmen. With 3 riders there. That's the Inspector General apologizes over media comments. And farmers-herders clash, federal government's priority for now. That's according to Lai Mohammed, Information Minister. And Senate committee suspends recess to discuss killings. Now, that's also the lead story for this day newspaper. It says, herdsmen have declared war against Nigeria. Soyinka cries out. That's Professor Wole Soyinka. And you have a number of writers there. Federal government crisis is receiving the highest attention. And Saraki orders Senate panel to expedite action on killings. 56 Taraba victims get mass burial and families narrate their ordeal. And Benue to bury its dead today. And IG apologizes.
Well, it's the same headline, and that's what's leading on the front page of the Independent. Independent says, captions it this way: we wrote the presidency over Benue attacks. We wrote the presidency over Benue attack. A statement credited to Governor Otom of Benue State. With a couple of writers there, I'll just take some of them. Inspector General of Police Idris apologizes over comments on killings. And Nigeria, Yemen top lists, UN list on human displacement. 55 killed by herdsmen in Taraba. Benue registers 80,000 IDPs. That's the lead story for the Independent. Well, the Blueprint is leading with something different, and it's the Blueprint. It's leading with something different. It's also a story that's trending. It says, as Kaduna workers rally holds today, NLC El-Rufai battle ready. With rider, governor obtains warrant arrest. Police won, and we can't be intimidated, says Waba. That's NLC president. There's also the Benue story here. It says, I was misunderstood on Benue killing, says IGP. It's a story that's trending on page 6. All right. But let's look at these two stories, the Benue killings and, of course, the NLC El-Rufai issue.
Well, the people of Benue today will be burying the dead, and that today will mark the end of the 3 days mourning declared by the state government. But Senator Hoguzodema has urged Nigerian politicians to speak out on critical national issues. However, when they are speaking out, they should be guided by unity and national interest. On the Benue crisis, he says, the president acted rightly and constitutionally in deploying the police. He says that sending the military will have worsened the situation because Benue is not in a war situation. He said, we must allow statutory organs concerned to handle issues so as to make progress. Talking about statutory institutions, the Inspector General of Police held a meeting yesterday with stakeholders in Benue. He nimbled across to Nasarawa and hold a similar meeting. He will return to Benue and then converge a meeting of both stakeholders in Benue and Nasarawa so as we will find a lasting solution to it. At the end of the Federal Executive Council meeting yesterday, Minister of Information Alhaji Lai Mohammed said government is very much concerned about the herdsmen-farmers clashes, and he says it is receiving attention at the highest level. He, however, said there is no decision yet on troops deployment, and he spoke to the media after the council meeting. However, by evening of yesterday, there was a tweet from the presidency that says that, from the Daily Trust reports that the presidency has sent, the Nigerian Army has deployed security men to 3 states. The states are Benue, Nasarawa, and Taraba. And the special forces that have been deployed have been given instructions to secure all vulnerable communities and also prevent further attacks in the 3 states. The story that was read there, Professor Wole Soyinka has also borrowed president a word of advice. A president should learn from history and stop treating the killer herdsmen with kid gloves. He says incessant attacks by killer herdsmen is declaration of war on Nigeria. And hear what the professor says. He says the marauders are naughty children who should not be who cannot be admonished paternalistically into good neighborly conduct. You also recall that special assistant to the president of media had also said that those who were reading ethnic and religious meaning into the Benue crisis were actually subscribing to what he described as a simplistic reduction. Meanwhile, the Senate committee, as Kingsley read, is to convene a plenary, and they are to discuss the issue of Benue. Senate President is on record to have said that he blames the security agencies and the faulty in intelligence gathering for all this crisis.
Bayo, just two stories inside the inside this day. That's at pages 11, and then another one also on page 12, still on the farmers herdsmen clashes. A story that you might not be able, cannot upload that on the screen for you to see, but page 11 of this day newspaper. The headline is this: Fayose raises the alarm over herdsmen planned invasion of Ekiti, with a rider places hunters on red alert.
Yes, in fact, he held a meeting with hunters at the government house yesterday, and he gave them instructions to go back to their communities and defend their people. He says he has advanced information that they are planning to invade, headers are planning to invade Ekiti State ahead of the July election that is expected in Ekiti State.
I'm just wondering, well, headers usually, of course, will be the ones that are the shepherds that we know, but from it would appear from what is happening that is probably the perpetrators of so these violent killings are actually mercenaries.
Well, you see, there is a confusion here. The herders are people who rear cattle and are in locations. They herd their cattle within the vicinity. The pastoralists are the ones who migrate from places across, and they are the Fulani herdsmen. They are called the Fulbe. They are there in Futajalon in Mali, they are there in Burkina Faso, they are there in Togo, they are there in Niger, Chad, Cameroon, Nigeria, Central African Republic, up to somewhere in Sudan. And they move across the sub-Saharan desert looking for pastures. And because of war in Mali and other places, you have infiltration of military with some of these people bearing arms. To make a distinction between the invading pastoralists and the herders who are indigenous. In fact, some of the herders who are involved in some of these crises are settled in the localities for where they are in conflict with the natives, either in Taraba, either in Benue, or either in Enugu. The last time it happened in Nimbo, they called a Fulani headman who said he had been living in Enugu for 33 years. That is where he was born, that is where he had grown, and he was called upon to intervene in the crisis. So this intelligence must be read so that you can find solutions to it.
Absolutely. And then, you know, of course, there are expressions of sympathies for the persons who have been killed. Taraba, we read from the front page of this day, one of the riders, 56 victims. And then Benue, 71. That gives you 127 human beings. Yes. Who have been killed in this crisis. Let's take a look at other headlines.
In Kaduna,
you were talking about the Kaduna,
the Kaduna crisis. The NLC is proposing what they describe as a solidarity rally, and they are predicating that on the grounds that the action of the Kaduna State government is in violation of a substituting court order. However, the Kaduna State Police Command has also raised an alarm that it has not approved any rally, and because it doesn't want to worsen the apparent crisis situation in Kaduna State, so it's asking the NLC to stay away. So I think tempers must be tempered now so as not to increase the temperature that is prevailing in the country now.
All right, Bayo, very quickly, let's take a look at other stories trending on the dailies. On the blueprint, a trending story there, INEC OKs, that's below the nameplate. INEC OKs, 21 new political parties received 90 fresh applications. That's on page 8. And Saraki orders the Senate panel to investigate Benue killings. Another story there at the end of that's on the right hand side of the paper, just above the nameplate. Lagos monarch's son arraigned over EFCC informant's murder. That's on page 25. Very quickly, let's move over to the blueprints. On the above the nameplate, it says Chief Justice of Nigeria moves to punish media discussion of matters in court. CJN moves to punish media discussion of matters in court. All right, Kingsley.
All right, Bayo, two other headlines we'll take from this day and another one from leadership, and then you come in to discuss just one or two of them. Above the nameplate of this day newspaper, crude oil price hits 3-year high of $69. Crude oil price hits 3-year high of $69 with the rider New York sues oil multinationals over climate change. And below that, police arrests 52 protesting Shiites in Abuja. That's on page 10 in greater detail. And also there, that says Ahmed Rufai Abubakar appointed NIA chief. NIA stands for the National Intelligence Agency. They were the ones that were involved in the Osborne money stash. From Leadership newspaper, at the foot of the front page of Leadership newspaper, there's a story that says customs abandoned 180 billion naira patrol boats at Marina Jetty. Customs abandoned 180 billion naira patrol boats at Marina Jetty. That's on page 8. Bio.
Well, the news about the increase in the crude oil price at the world market, already some newspapers are speculating that already it is $22 above the benchmark set in the 2018 budget that is still before the National Assembly for consideration. And the higher the crude oil prices go, the higher the pump price go up to around the world.
That's right. And then for us, the higher the landing cost and other mechanics that they talk about in fuel scarcity issues.
But talking about the Chief Justice warning, in fact, it was emphasized by his special assistant on media, Mr. Basi Awasam. And he says that Nigerian media must be warned to respect and uphold that practice of refraining from publishing opinion on matters pending before the law. Every trained journalist knows that when something is pending before a court, it's sub judice and it's not supposed to be discussed. But however, Nigerian journalists are caught between two traditions. Journalists that have been trained along the British tradition respect this practice of sub judice. But those who have their training from United States tend to say they can even express opinion on matters even pending before courts of law. And this is what the development that you will find in Nigerian journalism that is causing this confusion. And it's good that the Chief Justice has asserted the authority. And he says the judiciary will not hesitate to insist and commit those persons who commit such contempt to the terms of imprisonment that goes along with it.
Yeah, but the point you just touched on there is a very significant one in terms of why we seem to have this apparent confusion.
Yes.
My brother, you are, of course, when we have guests on the program for a discussion segment, there are matters that are sub judice. Of course, we steer clear of such issues.
Yeah.
But when you talked about the distinction between those who got their training, say in the U.S., that's American and the British traditions, there's some of the mistaken impression that you can transport wholesale or transfer wholesale the application of the First Amendment jurisprudence under the U.S. Constitution into the Nigerian media practice. It's not applicable.
Yes. Not at all.
All right, Baya Toebe, on that note, we'd like to appreciate you. Thanks for being with us today. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so that does it for our newspaper review. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll be looking at the extractive industry, that's oil and gas as well as mining, and the prospects and potential challenges for 2018.
NTA TV College Jos, an affiliate of the prestigious Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria, is organizing a one-month short course on online news reporting. The course is scheduled for 5th February to 16th March 2018 at the NTA TV College premises, Rayfield, Jos. The cost for workshop is 100,000 naira per participant, accommodation inclusive. This course will be targeting professional journalists and those wishing to pursue courses in this field. The course will be teaching participants the act of using mobile phone cameras and digital cameras to generate reports and how these news stories, photos and videos can be produced or even published straight from the field, making the news production process faster and more efficient. Take advantage of this opportunity. NTA TV College, training you to be the best you want to be. For inquiries, contact the academic office on 0806 908 9807, 0816 956 1843.
It's that time of the year when we appreciate all those that mean so much to us. Our sponsors, our clients, government at all levels, corporate bodies, advertisers, religious bodies, civil society groups, political parties, businesses, and above all, you, our esteemed viewers. Together, we made 2017 great. Together, we shall make 2018 even greater. That's why we say thank you. Merry Christmas and a prosperous New Year.
The
time has come for Nigeria to take her rightful place in world sports with the first national grassroots sports festival to discover and prepare sport talents and develop future world champions for Nigeria. The festival date is 3rd to 10th March 2018. Venue is the National Stadium, Abuja, packages A and B. This is the opportunity for you to promote your brand through the festival. For broadcast sponsorship, which include live broadcasts, highlight shows, and TV fans show, contact the Chairman, Chief Coordinator, Angelo Peter I. Elosia, or Nick Onishi. Organizers, Grassroots International Sports Academy and LOP Worldwide Television. Endorsed by the Federal Ministry of Youth and Sports Development. Broadcast partner, NTA.
All right, welcome back. You're still watching Good Morning Nigeria, and we're live on the network service of the NTA. First, we have our first guest, and the first item we're looking at this morning is developing the downstream infrastructure and refineries. That's the downstream sector of the oil industry. And
that's right, Rhoda. I mean, quite clearly significant, even though we're looking at the prospects for the extractive industry for 2018. Our primary concern with regard to the oil and gas industry has to do with the downstream sector. That's the one that touches most directly, the end users of refined petroleum products, as you see, whether you're buying petrol, whether you're buying diesel, or you're buying lubricants, or you're buying cooking gas, or the LPG, kerosene, and all that. So that's the significant area that we're looking at this morning.
And funny enough, we're talking about this morning, since the queues are already building up in filling stations
in Abuja.
In Abuja
that's
this
right.
morning.
Yeah, we saw that while we were coming. I think probably it started last night. We're not sure what the reason is, but obviously let's take a look at what the prospects would be. And we have joining us in the studios this morning to take a look at this subject, the Dr. Rabiu Suleiman. Dr. Rabiu Suleiman is a senior technical advisor to the Minister of State Petroleum Resources, and it's also the Group Executive Director in charge of refineries and downstream infrastructure of the NNPC. Dr. Rabiu Suleiman, pleasure to have you join us on Good Morning Nigeria.
It's my pleasure. Thank you very much indeed.
All right, so let's begin with the larger issues before we now narrow it down to the one that touches those of us who are motorists, those of us who also are passengers, those who use refined petroleum products. Now, refineries and downstream infrastructure. Where do you say downstream infrastructure as part of your assignment? What does that entail, and where are we with regard to downstream infrastructure?
Thank you very much. Downstream infrastructure generally refers to all segments of oil and gas installations and activities that will lead to the delivery of petroleum products, in particular to the pump head of a filling station, ranging from the pipeline infrastructure, the tank facilities, and the conveyance of such products through various means of transportation. That is the infrastructure generally that conveys downstream products, that is petroleum products, as refined, to the end user. So that is what downstream infrastructure refers to in this context.
Well, just recently we went through the fuel scarcity, and that was last month. But then, you know, it brings to mind the question of what are the key challenges? It's obvious that there are challenges in that sector, but then what are the key challenges that you're having with the downstream infrastructure?
Now, key challenges, when you talk of fuel scarcity, it is important to understand that it's a recurrent decimal almost every year towards the end of this year. Incidentally, in December, when the winter commences. And you cannot isolate the cost of petroleum products, for example, from the cost of crude. Once the crude oil prices, today I saw in the papers, just read by you, that it has reached even the highest level in 3 years. Once crude oil begins to rise in price, the price of products also is reflective of that. So that is one key challenge we face. So when you have that, you will see natural increase in petroleum product price globally. Now that is one. The second aspect is that even when you have the products and your infrastructure is not good enough to deliver on time, you see delays in delivery. If a truck will take 7 days to reach its destination, it will be different if it can reach its destination within a day. The same thing if your pipelines do not exist. That is the cheapest means of getting products to various tank farms in the country. For example, we have 22 depots. If the pipelines are not in good shape and therefore have not been able to deliver products through the pipelines into various locations, you have no option but to truck these products across the country. If you are trucking about 1,000 trucks every day, that would be huge in terms of number, but when you look at consumption, it is slightly lower than what we expect to consume. So there are various aspects to it, and also infrastructure could have to do with, do we have the sufficient number of refineries that will meet the requirements of today? The last refinery that was commissioned in Nigeria was 1989. And from that time onwards, our consumption pattern has multiplied severally. And therefore, the existing refineries, even if they work at 100% capacity, are not likely to meet the national demand. We must continue to import. Today, from the statistics, you consume about 35 to 40 milliliters every day. So that is one of the key reasons. So the infrastructure issue is to be addressed squarely if we have to get to that level of comfortable delivery of petroleum products.
I'm wondering, you talked about refineries already. We also took on this subject matter with guests earlier this week, where we're discussing the so-called appropriate pricing of petroleum products. We have Nigeria has 4 refineries, yes. 2 in Port Harcourt, 1 in Warri, and the other in Kaduna. What is the state of the 4 refineries?
The state of the 4 refineries is, to say the least, not working at optimal capacity as we speak. Now, the refiners have been in bad shape for several years, unfortunately, and for that reason, they don't run at their expected capacity. Today, you hear the refinery is up to date, tomorrow it is down due to extensive work requirements that is needed to have a sustainable operation. So the refineries are not running optimally, we must admit, but efforts are in place as we speak to ensure that all the refineries are up and running and work at optimal capacity. But the minister made a promise by 2019, all the 3 refineries will be up and running at an average of 90% operational capacity. Should that happen, therefore, we can say that the refinery is up and running. But today, they are not running as efficiently.
What operational percentage are we looking at? Against the background that some weeks to the close of 2017, there was a report tucked in with some of the inside pages of the papers that there was going to be a shutdown of Kaduna refinery, or that Kaduna refinery was operating at less than 25%.
Yes, that is a fact. There was going to be a shutdown. You know, each refinery globally mandatorily needs to undergo a turnaround maintenance activity at least once every 2 years. Nigerian refineries have not seen those maintenance interventions for the last 10 years, to say the least. And therefore, they have to be shut down. And this government has made deliberate decision to see how we can upgrade, not only shut down for turnaround maintenance, but also upgrade the existing facilities and bring them to run to a minimum of 90% operational capacity. And that is the program that is in place, and therefore we intend to phase down shutdown of the refineries in order that we can upgrade them and then carry out the major interventions that are required for that optimal capacity to be attained and sustained.
But then, talking about upgrade, some sort of maintenance, have been done, maintenance were done some time ago, not too long ago. Is it that it's not an issue of maintenance, but is it that the equipments we have there are obsolete and that they need new installations?
No, refinery can run there are refineries that run for over 100 years today. Mm-hmm. And therefore, you cannot talk of obsolescence of an entire refining complex. You can talk of obsolescence of certain portions, certain segments of some of the equipments. Yeah. And to a large extent, technology is running very, very fast. And therefore, you manufacture one thing today and tomorrow the assembly line is out and they go to the next level of that. That is how technology moves. So there are certain equipments and certain facilities probably you can say they are obsolete in terms of that. So that is what we mean by upgrade when you want to carry out an upgrade of a certain equipment. It's just like your laptop, your computer. It can be version 2010, you want to upgrade 2012 or 2013 as it were. So the refinery generally needs general overhaul. On-the-run maintenance may not be sufficient in a refinery that does not have a consistent mandatory 2-year maintenance intervention. So what we are talking about is the maintenance we have been making to ensure that the refineries keep on running. But there must be a time when you have to carry out serious overhaul and you shut down for a minimum of 3 to 6 weeks and you change every component, every heavy rotating equipment so that you can have a plan to return as if it were new.
I'm wondering, I mean, just still on the refinery issue, Dr. Suleiman, I'm sure you are also familiar with the Nigerian frustration with the so-called turnaround maintenance. That refineries, you keep hearing of turnaround maintenance, it's never ending. Why is this so? Is it a racket or what?
No, I don't think it's a racket. There is a poor perception about turnaround maintenance in this country. Okay. It is general, as I mentioned earlier, all over the world, you must carry out turnaround maintenance. Whether it is done well or not done very well is a different matter altogether. And turnaround maintenance, just like your car, if you take your car to a mechanic and you decide to say that, don't touch the plugs, just change the engine oil. What that means is that you will have to come back at a shorter time than you ordinarily will come back for the maintenance of that vehicle. So that is what we mean. So if you don't carry out a general overhaul of the maintenance of that particular equipment or the plant entirely, definitely it may not be able to run as efficiently as you want it to happen. That is one. Two, if you don't regularly, a rotating equipment such as a rotor, pumps that keep rotating 24/7, you must find time to shut them down, to lubricate them, and to change some alignment, to check alignments and vibration and lubricate such things. Where there is wear and tear, you replace them. That has to be done. It's just like human body.
Where is the expertise or the competence for undertaking the regular turnaround maintenance? Is this in situ or is outsourced?
Now, in carrying out maintenance intervention or even turnaround maintenance, there are maintenance that can be done in situ by the maintenance crew of that particular refinery. There are equipments that you must bring what we call vendor specialists. Even if you maintain it in-house, the vendor specialist must stand by you to open right in front of him, to inspect jointly with him, and to certify that what is being done is being done correctly. So that is vendor specialist aspect of the maintenance intervention. So you have a lot of well-trained maintenance engineers and maintenance crews in all the refineries, competent enough. But of course, there are certain jobs, probably due to lack of appropriate tools, you must bring third party to come and carry out such kind of major intervention. And also, heavy tools, heavy equipment, heavy replacements of certain heavy duty equipments are long lead item materials that you have to require. I mean that you have to import and procure. You may have to bring in other professional bodies that specialize in those particular areas, not apply general knowledge. If you want to do a compressor, there are compressor specialists. There are pump specialists. There are rotor specialists. There are various specialists that exist that do those critical, what we call bad actors, critical job on those activities, on those equipments globally. And therefore, you cannot compare the experience of those that go around the globe and do those kind of maintenance than with the people that you have in-house. So there are specialist areas that require specialist touch, and there are areas where routine maintenance can be carried out by the in-house maintenance crew.
All right, Dr. Suleiman, over the years, licenses have been issued for refineries. You know, one begins to wonder why a lot of these licenses have remained unused.
Yeah, licenses, you know, the fact of the matter is that it's not enough to issue license. Why do you issue license? The fact that we issue license means that we understand there is insufficient capacity in the country. Therefore, there is a need to establish additional refineries. So licenses have to be issued. That's one. Two, and most important, if you acquire a license, you must have the funding to establish a refinery. And whether we like it or not, funding a new refinery of larger capacity is running into billions. Where is that money? You have to go outside and get the money and borrow the money. Even if you are a private investor, you have to go and source for money elsewhere. And probably you provide your own counterfeit funding. And you have to even do the counterfeit funding, you need some banks to support you, whether local or international, to give you some forms of guarantees for that counterfeit funding. So funding is key, which is been missing, and not because there is no sufficient funds in this world, but the movement of funds is associated with the risk exposure where you take those funds to. If the risk exposure is very high, nobody will want to put his money in that location. So and then you cannot site a refinery and be profitable as you want, unless you site it in close proximity to source of material, raw materials, in this case crude. Therefore, this insecurity of the Niger Delta is another major factor. We must get out of that insecurity before you can see the capital flight moving in to establish privately driven refineries. So that, in part, answers the question, why do we have license and yet the refineries have not been taken off? It's because of these reasons, but more importantly, is the issue of the risk exposure on financing. But we have gone very far nowadays. If you check the list, so far about 38 licenses have been issued. Out of the 38, about 10 of the smaller refineries, the modular refineries, have reached an advanced stage where environmental and social impact assessment has been carried out, where front-end engineering has been done, some detailed engineering has been done, land has been acquired, and so many of those things, and funding is being packaged. Why modular refinery? In our wisdom, we see that doing the smaller refineries probably will catalyze the establishment of refineries, faster than waiting until you have $5–10 billion like the Dangote refinery is doing. So with $100 million, $200 million, probably you can get some local banks to finance some of those things, some of those projects. So that is what we are doing, and we are confident that in the next few months, we are likely, when we finalize the financing syndication, we'll see one or two of the refineries in the range of those few ones that are established.
Dr. Suleiman, you say we. Who are the we? Is the NNPC investing in modular refineries?
NNPC has a major stake in whatever happens in oil and gas. NNPC is a major oil and gas company in the country. And even where the IOCs on the crude, NNPC is a major shareholder, as you know. 55 to 60% equity participation in all of them. Therefore, NNPC is a critical stakeholder in all the refineries that will be established. If they don't put in their money, they will likely be approached to provide the crude. Where do you go to buy the crude? So NNPC plays a common role in whatever activity you want to do in oil and gas.
I'm asking this question. Let's clarify the ownership, because you said 10 modular refineries are getting to fruition, they're coming to fruition. Are these licenses for private investors, or these are licenses that NNPC also has a stake by way of joint ventures? And then where are the 10 modular refineries likely to be set up?
These 10 are all privately licensed refineries, not NNPC-owned refineries. And then they are distributed across. I know there are some that are coming up in Edo, in Delta, in Rivers, in Imo. If you look at the list, I don't have the list with me, you'll see the distribution. All the 9 oil producing states have registered 1 or 2 or more modular refineries. And not only modular refineries, on the plate we have refineries that license that is up to 250,000 barrels. Like the Petrolex refinery in Lagos, in Ogun State, is 250,000 barrels. There is one that is 100,000 barrels also in Rivers. There are quite a number that are 79 in Edo and few others. The modular refinery is being mentioned because these are the smaller ones that are inching up faster than the bigger refineries.
In terms of Rhoda, if you recall, when we discussed appropriate pricing of petroleum products earlier in the week, our guest, and Dr. Suleiman, this is significant, one of our guests, Professor Badad, was talking about a mechanism by which local refiners could purchase the crude from NNPC virtually at cost of production plus a reasonable margin, rather than having using the international benchmark. If it's $69 per barrel today, don't sell to local refiners at 69 barrels per day. Do we have a sense of what perhaps the supply arrangement will be, the supply and pricing arrangement of crude to the modular refineries?
Now, as of today, there is no discussion to subsidize crude. That I know. Crude, refineries are designed to meet your requirement of crude, whether local or international, if it is large scale. Where you don't have crude available to you, if you are an export-oriented refinery, you buy your crude and you design your engineering philosophy to meet certain, crude specification. You don't need to tie your refinery to a particular crude. And therefore, that's one. Two, as I mentioned earlier, there is no discussion today on the table to see how we can subsidize the cost of crude. And why do we have to subsidize cost of crude? Refinery is a profitable business if it's efficiently managed and run. Why should we subsidize? Subsidy should be a bygone story. I will not subscribe to that unless I see superior argument. Crude is for sale internationally. No country subsidizes crude. And therefore we should buy it. Market should determine the price. Buy it at the market price, refine it and sell it at the market price. We are approaching deregulation. Today, diesel, which is the predominant product in modular refinery, has been deregulated. If you put a modular refinery, conventional modular refinery, about 54% of the fractions is diesel. And you buy diesel at different price today for the last few years. So why should we give incentive to sell crude, for example, unless if government decides on its own, in its own wisdom, which I don't have the authority to make decision on that, to subsidize crude, for example.
Well, you just said now that the 10 refineries, the modular refineries, are being owned by private investors, so private investments. But then that brings us to the role of the private investors in the downstream sector. How important is it?
Downstream investors are the most important to me, in my own personal opinion, in the downstream business. In any country where you de-emphasize the downstream private traders' activities, you may not get it right, particularly in a society like ours. In a very disciplined society, where there is serious consequence management and there is very robust regulation, government can run a business such as downstream business activity. But where there are abuses because of either our large size or lack of sufficiency in products, and you see some abuse, it is very difficult to wholly owned by government. So in my opinion, we must encourage the private sector to drive this economy, to buy products, to sell products, to distribute products at market determined price going forward.
The point has also been raised by some analysts as to perhaps the shocking experience that we have had in the country, that IOCs have no refineries anywhere in the country, unlike the experience, for instance, that they have in other locations where they operate, Houston, for instance.
That is a fact. For over 30 years, IOCs have been encouraged or requested to invest in downstream. That has not happened. But today, and that also do all with serious concerns of insecurity, as I mentioned before, to a large extent.
But of course, they are still prospecting as part of insecurity.
Yes, but at what price? At what cost? Now, we shouldn't be sentimental about that, but there is a lot of improvement. Only recently, Ajib has announced they want to do a 150,000 barrels capacity refinery. I sit on the technical team that is doing the feasibility study as we speak. Ajib is an international, it's an IOC, for example. So that is the future. If the IOCs, the Shell, the Chevron, the ExxonMobil invest downstream, probably we will see a lot of significant improvement. And also it means that they are involved in the total value chain, from crude oil exploration, production, down to refining and probably trading. Today, As you know, over the years, most of the upstream companies, IOCs, have all withdrawn in downstream market. Only Total today, ELF, has the largest filling station among the IOCs. Most of them have stopped, but it's a business of profit. We cannot close our eyes to that. If you don't make profit, and the environment is not good enough for you to make profit, naturally you will see withdrawals.
Dr. Suleiman, 10 modular refineries coming on stream. Is the AGIP proposal also part of it?
Yes, AGIP proposal...
Is it part of the 10 or separate?
No, it's not part of the 10. AGIP refinery is 150,000 barrels capacity they are proposing. It's not a modular refinery.
All right.
And therefore it's a large-scale refinery. So it will take some time to mature. We are doing some feasibility study as it is today, and we are trying to see what crude, what location, so many factors are being considered, and to see how we can drive it. So it is going to be solely owned and financed by ENI AGIP. But of course we are in discussion. Do you intend to carry on some other participants? Is NNPC interested to pick equity on that? Is any other private investor going to participate with you? Or is it going to be solely on? All these are under discussions. We have not reached that level yet.
There's no doubt about it that once you have 10 modular refineries operating plus any other that comes up, you're going to have a salutary effect in terms of supply of refined petroleum products. But this 10, they are still in the pipeline.
Yes.
What could possibly go wrong in terms of political risk, in terms of economic risk, in terms of security risk, that we as a country need to ensure that those risk factors do not hamper the advent of the 10 modular refineries?
There is serious engagement. If you recall, the vice president, when he was acting president, went around all the oil producing states. It is a matter of campaign, awareness campaign, engagement session, to bring awareness to the doorstep of everybody that there is the need to understand and to appreciate that if the insecurity is not eliminated completely, who suffers? The environment suffers. The immediate community also suffers. The country at large suffers. And therefore that awareness has been going on, and it has been successful to a large extent. The Honorable Minister also has gone around, is still on the process. We have been to Delta, we have been to Edo, we have been to Imo. We are going to follow up this visit and to discuss with the local communities and the leadership of the state so that they can understand the benefit of establishing these downstream business activities. So that is what is going on, and we are seeing positive, cooperation and collaboration in terms of frankness of purpose and intention to see how we can further develop the oil producing state, as it were. So that is going on. So the risk factors are gradually being eliminated. We are taking the state governors, they normally host the meeting with the royal fathers of the community, with the youth leaders, and everybody, with the oil companies operating within the state. We all assemble together to look at holistically what are the challenges and what are the complaints. What are the mitigating measures we need to put in place in order to ensure that when we establish these business activities, they will thrive, they will be sustained, and the overall country will see the benefit of that. So that is ongoing. Engagement and awareness campaign is the key issue, and that is what is going on. And we can see some positive development in that regard.
Well, let's look at the issue of corruption and the lack of transparency that is bedeviling the oil sector in Nigeria. How are you tackling that in the downstream sector?
Yeah, what is happening is tackling that in the downstream sector, in the oil and gas sector generally. You are aware of how the PIB was put together. Now the PIB, the governance structure has already been endorsed by the National Assembly, awaiting final endorsement and implementation. So when you have a very robust governance structure, and more importantly, you have in place reward and sanctions, that is consequence management in an organization, where whether the son of the king or the rich or the poor is treated the same, irrespective of political affiliation or where you come from. When you have that in place, and that is the journey we have embarked upon, you will be able to send anybody dismissed, retired, suspended, and pat him and say, well done, give him bonus. These are reward and sanction that have not been so enshrined over the years. And that is beginning to show itself. When you have that, even to say thank you for a job well done, you will see a lot of incentive for people to do better. So what I mean is that I advocate very strongly the institutionalization of consequence management in place.
All right, let's come back, Rhoda, let's come back to pipelines.
Yeah.
Many years in the past, there were instances of ruptured NNPC pipelines all across the country, and the reports were to the fact that those pipelines were old and that the routine maintenance or routine replacement that ought to have taken place did not take place. Plus, there was then a plan to also expand the pipeline network as part of some gas master plan or otherwise. Where are we now with regard to upgrade of your pipelines as well as extension of the pipelines?
Yes, a lot has happened on the source of crude. If you take Escravos Warri crude pipeline that delivers crude to Warri and Kaduna refinery, I led the team that rehabilitated that pipeline. As we speak, it is working. And it has been under serious security surveillance, and for the last 1.5 years, nothing has happened to it significantly. And that's so as very significant cost savings. From the ship movement we were doing at an average of $5 per barrel, today is less than 50 cents per barrel if you pump through the pipeline. The same thing with Boni Port Harcourt. That pipeline has been repaired and it is delivering crude to Port Harcourt refinery. There is a plan going forward to do what we call the HDD pipeline. That is, you bury the pipeline underwater where it is not easy for any vandal to reach it. It is underwater, and therefore you can. That also helps in clearing the navigational ways of even the ships that ordinarily will pass there that are now today being disrupted because of the pipelines crossings in the riverine areas. Yes. So that is going on significantly, but that is not enough. The pipeline that delivers products is the key and one of the most important pipelines that crisscross the country. You repair today, it is vandalized tomorrow. So there is serious engagement with community, and there are various contracts in place for pipeline right-of-way clearance, given to local community contractors, some form of competition between one segment of community to another, who keeps his pipeline well. A lot is going on to ensure that, one, as we create awareness that the environment when impacted, it is to you. The soil impact is to you, immediate community. The fumes you inhale when you break the pipe is to you. And when you steal and you contaminate the product, it could be your own car that you take the contaminated products into. So that awareness is going on. That maintenance of the pipeline right of way is also going on. And we are instituting a kind of competition, as it were, between communities and communities, who keeps his pipeline better and well, so that you can see how do you further compensate such kind of community.
I was going to ask you, earlier on you were speaking to the issue of the PIB, that's the Petroleum Industry Bill. That's a bill that has been hanging now for some years. How significant is that bill to the downstream sector?
It is very, very significant in the sense that now the benefit to downstream sector is that there will be a regulation that will ensure compliance. Today, what you observe in terms of queues, in terms of deliveries, is believed to a large extent, in addition to availability, is compliance to rules and regulations.
Okay.
So the bills, when fully passed, you will see a very robust regulatory body that has the authority and autonomy to take decisions on its own, independent of any influence, external influence, and therefore drive consequence management, as it were. So it will impact positively. Filling stations will be designed and built at the right place, meeting certain standards, international standards. We have not reached there. When you go to other countries, you can see filling station under the basement of 60-story building in Japan. Today, filling stations catch fire because we are not well trained, we don't care less. There's a lot that needs to be done. So regulations, PIB will address to a large extent downstream most of these concerns. Creating awareness, understanding the benefit, understanding the concerns and the need to do things right. So that is what PIB is going to do, and also it will open up investors to come and invest, and they know that the investment is protected and they will be able to run a business and make profit.
Let me take you back to the issue of pipelines. Yeah, okay. What do we know at this time about the incidence of pipeline vandalism? Is it rising or is it decreasing?
Significantly decreasing.
In which parts of the country? Arepo used to be notorious for this. That's somewhere around the Lagos.
I'm sure you have not heard of Arepo for the last 1 year.
Absolutely.
Significant work is going on. You know, the less you talk about it, the more you make achievements. That is the secret about it. The moment you start celebrating, oh, I've achieved this, you have further, you know, these people who vandalize pipelines to a large extent, especially the area you mentioned, are under influence of so many things. Drugs, incentives, and local interest groups. The moment you begin to celebrate success, that's when somebody will feel, because he's out of his head, that let me show them. That's why you don't hear much about. A lot is being recorded. A lot of achievements have been done. That's why you don't hear about Arepo anymore. That's why you don't hear, even in the riverine area, a lot has been achieved. There is very close engagement between the operators, the operator, and the local community, as it were. So that is going on successfully, and I think we can say that we have gotten it right for the first 1 year, 1.5 years in terms of engagement, and therefore that has been improved continuously.
I'm wondering, that's on the 2nd of January, that's about 9 days ago, most parts of the southwest in Nigeria were plunged into darkness because it was said that the gas supply through a pipeline it got disrupted to the various power plants, Egmi, Papalanto, Olorunshogo, and others. And the allegation or the claim was that there was a fire incident somewhere around Okada. Are these surface pipes or these are gas pipes that ordinarily should be buried in the ground? And why are they so vulnerable?
No, you don't bury all pipelines along all right of way underground. The terrain of the environment will determine how do you run your pipeline. For instance, river crossings, bridges, and what have you. You know, so truly there was a fire incident, and that is a major trunk line of the gas, and that can happen anywhere. But technology are emerging where you can encase the pipeline and even protect it against such kind of leakages. These are all being discussed. Various technologies have been, we are receiving a lot of presentations, and we are looking at how to improve such encasement of such pipelines that are ordinarily exposed on the surface of the land.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Suleiman. Well, we'll have tweets coming in from our viewers via Twitter handle at NTAGMN. And the very first tweet is from Mekere7. There are questions. The tweets we have are questions. I know you have addressed some already. Probably you might want to speak further to them. The first one says, ask the guest how many times have the refineries been maintained, and after the maintenance, how much is the refinery producing?
If I understand how many times, any time you finish maintenance, major turnaround maintenance in a refinery, it is mandatory that when you commission that refinery, to say the least, it must run at least 90%. Your ability to sustain operation over time is what has been the challenge. And over time here, as I mentioned earlier on, you do a major maintenance intervention in other developed countries even after 18 months. Conservatively here we say 2 years. So what is happening differently this time around as we are trying to do maintenance intervention, since we are sourcing funds from third party, and we are also engaging the original builders of the refinery to come and maintain these refineries. Embedded into this arrangement is that it must run with guarantees for a minimum of 2 years at 90% capacity. In this country, we did turnaround maintenance. I was in Port Harcourt refinery. We did turnaround maintenance 1992, 1994, and we run that refinery at 105% capacity after maintenance. So it depends on how thorough the work has been done. If you have a long-term delay and neglect, definitely you will see deterioration in performance.
I'm wondering, just before, the other tweet, actually, you've also addressed it from Lanre Salu. You were saying how many modular refineries licenses have been issued. You have already discussed that. You have 10 of them that are virtually coming on stream. You have all kinds of issues that they're working on. Is the NNPC planning on investing on new refineries of its own, other than seeking partnership with those who have been issued licenses for the modulars?
Yes, NNPC is clearly interested. That's why you have a division called Greenfield Refinery Division, with a group general manager sitting. NNPC has engaged various groups, international, local, to see how they can jointly establish refineries. And a lot of work has been done. Feasibility study was done by NNPC for Bayelsa Refinery. It was done for Lagos. It was done for even Kogi State. A lot of work has been done and interest has been shown by NNPC. But funding over the time and insecurity were the major factors that delayed the take-up of such activities. That's why in my discussion I said, we are looking forward to see if IOCs come on board, will they want to partner with NNPC and take certain equity? Left for me, for my personal experience, we don't need to have 100% on government refinery. Learning from what we have today. Let's have the kind of Nigeria LNG model, where you have the Shell of this world, the Ajib, the Total Elf, and the NNPC co-owning the asset in different percentage of share equity participation. And you see leadership of that place drawn from different multicultural groups. The Dutch, the Italians, and the French and Nigerians coming together to sit on the same management. You see, that is why we have lesser problems in the Nigeria LNG today than we have in other fully owned government facilities, where interference comes in from anywhere.
And therefore, what you're suggesting is, by extension, the 4 refineries could undergo partial privatization?
Well, that is to be decided by government. I'm talking of the future investment.
So, I mean, if you're assuming, if the 4 at the moment are giving us the kind of headaches that we have seen over the decades, and you have persons who want to throw in their funds into all of this under the arrangement, would that help? Yeah,
to me, that is still under discussion, but not at official discussion. It can happen. It's up to government to decide. Today's government decided that we are not going to sell our refineries. We are not going to concession the Nigeria refineries. Why? Because even if you do that, even if the 4 refineries you mentioned are run at 100% capacity, we still need other refineries to come on board. So if you have the privately owned refinery and the government owned refinery for a few years, you may be able to compare management style. You may be able to compare where do we go wrong and begin to learn from that. In disciplined societies, there are many governments that run refineries efficiently. Go to China, for example, fully owned by government, and they run efficiently 100%.
Some persons might argue that's because in China, there's death penalty for corruption.
Yeah. We are heading towards that. That's right. We are heading towards that. You know, we're heading towards that. And that's why, you know, in well-developed countries, where they have a well-disciplined society, which Nigeria is trying to emerge into, you will see that what I mean by the consequence management I mentioned earlier on, where you know what do you do to warrant being sacked, dismissed, retired, jailed, as it were. So this is what we mean by consequence. And what do you do to say, give him bonus, promote him, and tell him thank you, write him a letter of commendation. Yes. This is a very, I mean, this is the future of the country, and that is the journey I'm beginning to see with the current administration.
Yes, you know, Dr. Suleiman, incidentally, just before the latest set of tweets came in, we had already asked the question. Our viewers are also thinking along the same line. We'll take this one from Ibn Bature. Ibn Bature tweets, so why is it that the government can't build a new refinery in Nigeria? Is it that we don't have the funds, or there is no space to build it? I'm really devastated.
And there's this one from Hausa Ibadan 16. It says, it will be too great if the federal government can build at least 3 refineries from the north, the south, east, and the west. I know some Nigerians, especially those in NNPC, will not like it because of the corruption going on in that sector.
Well, my simple comment is that government has the intention to encourage rather than to build new refineries. You talk of the north. For example, the exploration activities, which has been the subject of discussion, is going on. If we discover oil in commercial quantity in the Chad Basin and Benue, which is very promising, the only option available is to set up a refinery. Otherwise, we'll be landlocked with the crude, just as the case is with Niger Republic. So you must site a refinery. That is given. The same thing in the east, when you look at the Eastern Bloc, where we have prospects of getting crude around the Enugu and the Anambra Basin. If we find crude oil there, which is going on, you will have to definitely, even if you don't ask, you must consider setting up a refinery there.
All right, Dr. Suleiman, that's fine. I mean, let's not bring in the issue now of the advent of electric cars and what that might also mean for investment options with regard to all this. But let's just stick with the issue of facilities, the infrastructure. You talked earlier about the depots and the tank facilities that you have. Most persons in Lagos who go to the Apapa axis take a look at the number of tank farms that are all lying there, and they wonder if this is not some disaster waiting to happen.
No, if you say tank farms, you just talk of China. Go to China and see tank farms. We don't have tank farms, relatively. Now, it's a matter of discipline.
Do we have that discipline?
It is emerging. You know, what we are conceiving today, for example, is even to see how we can tie all the tank farms by the riverbank with pipelines, so that they can interchange their products from one tank pump into another tank farm, into another tank farm, and you put metering so that you can balance, you can ease out the congestion you are talking about in Apapa, for instance. Ogun State, that's why I talk about the Petrolex side. We just recently launched joined to commission a 300 million liter storage facilities by a company, Petrolex, in Ogun State. And they have been given a license to establish 250,000 barrels capacity refinery. You will see a lot of movement of activities out of Apapa towards that axis. By the time we do the conceived refinery, as you mentioned here, in the east, for example, in the north, from Chad Basin, Benue Trop, and even from Niger, considering siting a refinery within the border between Nigeria and Niger, because there is market out there in the north. Outside Lagos, Kano is the largest market. So by the time we grow as a nation, we'll have dotted refineries. And refineries, I must repeat, are never too many. Go and look at countries like Japan with about 43 working refineries. They have no crude oil, and to a large extent they are hopeless. They can never get crude oil in commercial quantity. One refinery in Japan, for instance, Idemisu refinery, is bigger than the Nigerian refineries all combined in capacity. Yeah, and they have market.
And the Japanese were the ones that came, Chiyoda, that came to build the Kaduna refinery.
Yes.
For us, and they have no crude oil. All right.
Well, I was going to ask Dr. Suleiman. Let's go back to the issue of distribution of petroleum, products. Each time that we have crisis like we saw last month, there's always the issue of marketers. NNPC kept saying we have products, it's everywhere, but then we saw hoarding, we saw diversion, issues of marketers. How come marketers have the capacity to make us go through the kind of experience that we just experienced last month?
I think it's general. It's not only marketers, it's also the Nigerian populace that is panicking. And it is becoming part of us. Every December we panic. But more importantly, believe me, the simple solution to petroleum products scarcity is availability. Marketers, NNPC, everybody. If we flood the market, you will see that where will you hide it and why? Only 3, 4, 5 months ago, we saw no scarcity and people were begging you to come into the refilling station. As December approaches, it means there is some harm in it. Not necessarily that doesn't change. Imports have been coming in, and of course prices have been going out, but the marketers also withdrew from imports. So it became the sole responsibility of NNPC to do that. And I must admit, there is no capacity in NNPC to import all the requirements of Nigeria as of today. So if they withdraw, suddenly, definitely there will be some shock before we can stabilize and do massive importation. And even when you do massive importation, whose facilities is the same marketers' facilities that you have to put in your products, and you pay them for keeping the products, and throughput, you spend a lot of money and you get increase in price. So we must sit together and address this holistically.
In terms, again, of downstream infrastructure, the depots are very important. We had here one of your colleagues when the fuel scarcity was biting hard in December, and he was telling us how NNPC is working to revitalize its depots as well as the pipeline supplying it, so that we can also reduce the incidence of having trucks, deliver these products. Where do we stand now with regard to the rehabilitation of the depots or the pipeline supplying them?
Now, only recently the GMD on NPC went and commissioned the newly rehabilitated depots. I'm sure he was in Kano, he was in different other depots. If you go to Silesia today, you'll be surprised what you see. Fantastic facility. So a lot is going on in the rehabilitation of the depots. Much, as I mentioned earlier, is going on the pipeline infrastructure. Pushing the product through the pipe is the cheapest means and the fastest means of getting products. So we must continue to engage local communities in such a manner that they don't tamper with the pipelines. Of course, the tanker drivers also, we must engage with them. You see them expanding their tanks. Instead of 33,000 liters, you have 60,000 liters truck moving on town, damaging the road. So many things. So it's a holistic problem that has to be addressed holistically. So we have to engage tanker owners, tanker drivers, marketers, the NNPC, the regulators, and all other Nigerians to see how we can together put efforts together to appreciate that this is a critical aspect of Nigerian well-being that we must address holistically.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Rabiu Suleiman. I want to thank you so much for your thoughts and time on Good Morning Nigeria today.
Thank you very much indeed.
All right, we've been speaking to the Senior Technical Advisor to the Minister of State Petroleum Resources and Executive Director Refineries and Downstream Infrastructure of the NNPC, Dr. Rabiu Suleiman. We'll take a short break now, and when we come back, our second item for discussion, we will be focusing on the mining sector. We'll be back shortly.
Hear the call of change. Stand up, Nigeria. Change is here and it's going to stay. Change begins with you. Oh yeah, make we go. So let the change begin from within. Look at you, Ogerula. Change begins with you and me. Change begins with me. Change begins with me. Change begins with me.
Nigerians. Suicide bombers are not spirits. They are not ghosts. They are human beings like you and me. They live amongst us. They are your neighbors. They are your friends today, but terrorists tomorrow. So you must know your neighbor now. Security begins with you and me. Know your neighbor. Be vigilant. Be security conscious. Report suspicious persons, objects and movements to the police and other security agencies. The security of our nation is a duty for you and me.
If you see something, say something. Nigeria unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
All right, you're welcome back. But if you just tune on, it's Good Morning Nigeria, and we are still reaching you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We're still talking about the extractive industry. We already signed off the expert on oil and gas. Now we're having a guest join us to discuss mining. But before we bring him in, let's take this background report by our correspondent, Salihu Abdullahi.
Nigeria is blessed with large deposits of mineral resources, but oil appears to have dominated the scene for a long time. At the last count, the nation is verified to have about 44 different minerals spread across the country. It could be recalled that Nigeria used to be a major mining country where some were associated with the minerals extracted around them. For instance, Jos was referred to as the Tin City, Enugu, the Coal City, and so on. With the oil boom and Nigeria's over-reliance on oil production for revenue and foreign exchange, the nation became a mono-economy where over 80% of the nation's resources come from oil. Mining took the backseat as it was abandoned and neglected. As of today, oil still tops the extractive industry, while efforts are being made to revive the mining sector, which according to the Nation Bureau of Statistics only accounted for about 0.12% of GDP in recent years. Data from the Ministry of Mines and Steel Development shows that Nigeria has several million metric tons proven reserves of coal, iron ore, lead, zinc, among others, with low production which are yet to be mined at commercial level. The idea now is to ensure that more is done to attract investment to the sector and enhance output of the sector and its contribution to the GDP. While this is being done, Nigeria's hunger for oil seems to be growing, with ongoing oil search in Nigeria's inland basins, such as the Benue Trough, Niger, and Sokoto basins. This is in addition to the Lake Chad oil search, which has been on for years, with the present administration taking various steps to diversify the economy and generate more revenue. Experts believe that more policies need to be introduced or perfected to ensure that the extractive industry is developed for optimal benefit. Many also believe that with good governance and transparent management, the revenues from extractive industries can have impact on reducing poverty and boosting shared prosperity. How to make this a reality is the issue guests are set to discuss on Good Morning Nigeria as we examine the prospect for the extractive industry in 2018.
Thank you very much, Salihu Abdullahi, for that background report. We're now being joined by Sani Shehu, the National President, Miners Association of Nigeria, on the prospect for the mining industry in 2018. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right, let's begin with obviously what was cherry news of the course of the recession that the country had to endure 2016 and part of 2017. The mining sector recorded positive growth. Agriculture also recorded positive growth. What was the secret behind the positive numbers that we got from mining?
Well, the secret is increased government interest. Mining, as we know, used to be a prominent economic sector in the past, and after some years, it gradually became moribund. Now, it requires government interest and involvement at rejuvenating the industry. And I think that was what we saw in the last 2 years. And I also believe that was what accounted for the increase in the positive performance of mining industry.
There have been reforms, I know that, in the mining subsector of the economy. Yeah. What is your take on aspects of these reforms, particularly with regard to getting appropriate funding, seeking to provide infrastructure and getting development partners to also chip in and generally regularize the cadastral issues and licenses and leases and all of that?
Well, the reform is there. But more importantly, there is a roadmap that guides the reforms. And the roadmap has been able to capture all what you have enumerated. And it's like a statement of ambition on how the sector should look like, in the future. And the reform is perhaps a precondition for the growth of the mining sector to look like in other advanced mining jurisdiction. So the roadmap is there, Activities in the roadmaps are also there. Timeline for the activities are also there. So with the roadmap, and there is also, in addition to the roadmap, money implementation strategic team MIS. Unlike previous roadmap, this structure is responsible for the implementation of the roadmap. So with these structures in place, and with the improved funding in place, with the sensitization of the stakeholders in place, one can comfortably predict that in the nearest future, mining is going to, grow greater and contribute significantly to the national GDP.
Well, in your opening comments now, you just said that part of the reason why we're seeing the growth in the mining sector is because, there's a new commitment or renewed commitment by government. Yeah. Is that also applicable to the private sector? Are we seeing more interest by private investors now than before?
Yeah. The government interests and involvement also encourage private sector participation.
Okay.
Remember, mining is the regulatory sector where you have to get all sorts of license, you have to pay all sorts of dues. Now, you also have to, acquire data to be able to mine successfully. All these things, the data, the licenses, are all, a government issue. And therefore, there is a relationship between, government attitude and private sector's prosperity within the mining sector.
Are miners satisfied with the current governance regime for the subsector?
We are happy with the development, but when you are talking of satisfaction, you are talking of perfection. And therefore, the system is not perfect yet, but we are happy with the development because it's a development that is all-inclusive. Unlike before, the style of leadership of the present administration is an all-inclusive kind of involvement, where all stakeholders are involved. But even the government itself will not claim to have been satisfied with what is happening.
What would you like to see more?
What I would like to see more is a continuous implementation of what is in the roadmap and strengthening the MIST, the mining implementation strategic team. Also strengthening all the departments that are responsible for issue license, mining inspectorate department, environmental compliance. All these departments should be properly structured. And I think funding is critical to what I'm saying.
Yeah,
more and more funding.
I'd like you to speak to the issue of funding.
Yes.
How is the funding of the sector as we speak?
Yeah.
Do you think it's enough?
No, it's not enough, but it has improved reasonably compared to what we saw in the past. There is need for a sustainable funding that should come from different financial windows, not even government alone. I understand the Honourable Minister has reached so many funding agencies, the World Bank, African Development Bank. All these things are steps at the right direction and making sure that the funding windows are not restrictive. And therefore, funding is critical. I'm happy with what the President did. I think it has been on the news that 30 billion has been approved for the development of the industry.
That's right.
But that was at a level of approval. We need to see the funding in the practical terms, like what is happening to agric. An average farmer is happy today because the funding has gone down the grassroots.
What will funding do if it cascades down to?
Funding for mechanization for the small-scale miners and funding for the formalization of the artisanal miners. These are the two dominant groups that are actually dominating the operation of the mining sector as of today. 80 to 90% this category of operators. So they need funding, as I said, for the artisanal miners that you show on your screen that are so disorganized. They need to be organized and formalized. And funding can be used as a carrot to attract that formalization. And for the small-scale miners who are fairly formal, they need to be mechanized. Remember, in the 60s, 50s, mining was the mainstay of the economy because it was not a digger and shovel kind of mining. It was a mechanized mining. And mechanization has a cost, a very high cost. Therefore, as a matter of responsibility, government has to come in. And we are happy with what they have done so far. There is this 5 billion naira intervention, loan intervention by the ministry that is managed, by the Bank of Industry. But you realize that about 5 months after the presentation of the dummy check, I can say authoritatively that no miner is yet to access the fund.
So the money, the grant or the loan is still a dummy, still in the dummy.
It's a loan, but I hope government should be realistic enough to find that if you are rejuvenating a moribund sector with all different of small-scale operation, there is need for government to move from the issue of loan to grant, not in cash, but perhaps in kind.
What is it that the bigger players are bringing in? Are they not bringing in equipment? Are they not also bringing in financial investment?
The issue is, do we have bigger players? Who are the bigger players?
We've heard names around some of them. I don't want to mention the names. We've had them on this program in the past.
Yes.
Talking about aspects of coal
yes,
and so on and so forth.
Yes. Yes, but you see, if you look at the percentage of the bigger players in the mining industry today, maybe about 5%. And there is need for the small-scale operators to be nurtured, to be encouraged to grow. And while government I think government has to do a lot of things. Nurture the artisanal miners, formalize them, nurture the small-scale miners to the level of maybe mid-tier miners, and then to junior miners before you talk of big players. So it's a level that you have to achieve gradually. But the bulk of the possibility lies on government, because the sector is reimagined, and government has the responsibility to support it to grow.
All right. The value addition is one critical aspect when we talk about the extractive industry in Nigeria. In mining, to what extent do you think Nigeria has gone in terms of developing its capacity, to add value to what it has processed or extracted?
Yeah. I think we are at the infant stage, but I'm happy that the roadmap has captured that too. And part of what the government is thinking on the area of funding, including the funding of the processes for the purpose of value addition. Okay. And the processes can involve industrial mineral, the gemstone industry, and even the metal. And it is very, very important to capture that properly, because most of our industries need this industrial mineral as raw material in their industries. Yeah. The scenario, unfortunately, at the moment is that they import it.
Yeah.
So we should be able to use what we have to get what we want. How do we do it? Through value addition. And I'm happy also that government prioritize the development in of industrial mineral in the roadmap, and even in this loan facility of the Bank of Industry. But what is important is this: there should be a synergy between the users of this industrial mineral that's the manufacturers, the miners, with the government facilitating, with the government supporting.
Whose responsibility is it to add value? Look, let's take agriculture for instance.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not the farmer who grows who grows a crop, or who has an orchard that adds value to it.
Yeah.
Whose responsibility? Who is that intermediate person between the miners and the end users?
Well, we have processors. Even though some miners mine and process, but ideally, in the value chain structure, there should be players. There should be multiple players. You should mine your industrial mineral, and then sell it to a processor that can add value and sell it to the industries. But you will also realize that the profit made from the mining of this industrial mineral are relatively very, very, very small in relation to the price of the processed raw material. And therefore, with support, miners can mine and also process their material and sell it to the industry. But there is also opportunity for other players to emerge within the value chain to just buy and process and then supply to companies. It's possible.
How would you respond to the allegations, sometimes widespread, that the mining industry, perhaps until recently, has been mired in all kinds of racketeering? That you have all kinds of underhand dealings, and you have Nigerians, small scale miners, artisanal miners collaborating with some foreigners, to just take the products away, and no proper accountability.
Yeah. You see, when there is a weak regulatory framework and weak enforcement of regulation, these irregularities are bound to exist. Because naturally, that's human factor. Man is prone to committing crime without check and balances from the authority. And as you said, as you rightly said, we are beginning to see changes. The regulations are now being enforced, and sensitization is also ongoing. So very soon things are bound to change.
All right, thank you very much, Sani Shehu, National President, Miners Association of Nigeria. Thank you for coming on Good Morning Nigeria.
It's a pleasure to be invited. Thank you.
Now let's join our sports desk for some update in the world of sports. All right, we're not able to bring you sports right now, but as soon as we have it, of course, we'll bring it to you. But then let's go to our foreign desk also for some foreign news.
In a third successive night, protests across Tunisia intensified as protesters rally over government's austerity measures that now spill over into unrest in the country. Reports say close to 240 people have been arrested, with the police using tear gas to disperse the crowd. And from California, reports say hundreds of rescuers are combing wreckage in the southern part of the country as more than a dozen people reported missing after mudslides, which has left 17 people killed. Reports have it that another 28 injuries have been reported in Santa Barbara County following the torrent that overwhelmed an area scorched by wildfires last month. More than 100 homes have been destroyed and another 300 said to have been damaged. Lastly, from Qatar comes a report that the country has begun seeking international arbitration in an attempt to end the blockage imposed by 3 of its Gulf neighbors and Egypt. This was announced by the Foreign Ministry spokesperson, days after UN investigation said the blockage was negatively impacting the people of the region.
Thank you very much, Patricia Sameluba, for the foreign reports. Now, as Rhoda earlier indicated, we're going back now to our sports desk to check out stories on soccer and others.
Nigeria's home-based Super Eagles and their counterparts from Cameroon played goalless in a tune-up game at the Moula El Hassan Stadium in Rabat on Wednesday night ahead of the 2018 Africa Nations Championship CHAN taking place in Morocco. The Chan Eagles will open their 2018 Chan campaign on Monday, 15th January against Rwanda, host of the last edition from 8:30 p.m. Nigerian time, before games against Libya on Friday and Equatorial Guinea on Tuesday, 23rd January. In the meantime, the English Football Association have confirmed that their national team will play a pre-World Cup friendly with the Super Eagles. The official Twitter account of the Three Lions tweeted that the friendly game with Nigeria is scheduled for Saturday, June 2nd at the Wembley Stadium in London, before taking on Costa Rica 5 days later at Leeds United. And in tennis, Argentine Juan Mata de Potro made a confident start to his preparations for the Australian Open with a 6-2, 6-4 win over Denis Shapovalov at the Auckland Classic on Wednesday. And former world number one Novak Djokovic says he intends to play in the Australian Open for now. The Serb returned after 6 months out with an elbow injury to win 6-1, 6-4 against world number 5 Dominic Thiem at the Kooyong Classic.
Australian Open is the big one. You know, it's the one where I want to be ready, and today I got to play number 5 of the world, Dominic, who has had the best season of his life in 2017. So it's a great start for me.
And entertainment news is up next.
A lot of lost grounds will be reclaimed.
Usually this is the season when prophecies are most released from clerics and the likes. Expectedly some spell doom, others cheerful. However, one wonders the inspiration behind the former P-Man president and controversial entertainer Charlie Boy's list of prophecies for 2018.
Pastors, they are planning to stop collecting tithes. They are building schools for their poor congregation. That would be fantabulous.
The popular convener of Amumu Dondu took to his Instagram page to prophesy into the year 2018, saying Boko Haram will take down their arms and organize a peace concert.
I see Boko Haram laying down their arms and organizing a peace concert.
Well, that's a loud amen to that.
Charlie Boy. All right, that's an entertainment for us. Let's go over down to the Weather Center to check out the weather prospects for the rest of today.
Hello, and welcome to weather forecast for Thursday. Now, this satellite imagery shows that there are evidence that we're beginning to see some rain-bearing winds over some part of the coast and the inland of the south. This should give some appearance of cloud in the coast of our forecast. And for the detail of Thursday's forecast, we expect predominantly dusty conditions throughout the day over the north of the country. While across the central state, we expect dusty conditions also in moderate visibility of about 3,000 to 5,000 meters over places like Abuja and Minna. Over the coast and the inland, we expect fog and mist patches in the early hours of the day, which should lift to partly cloudy conditions in the afternoon. While across some part of the coast of the southeast, notably areas around Port Harcourt and Calabar, there are slim chances of isolated showers at some point in the afternoon. And that's where we'll leave you for this forecast. Do stay tuned for our temperature graphics. I'm Olubade Damola, and thank you for watching.
And that does it on Good Morning Nigeria for today. We'll be back again tomorrow morning at 7. I'm Rhoda Anonam. Thank you for watching.
I'm Kingsley Osadolo. I join Rhoda in appreciating your tuning in. As she said, we're back tomorrow. We'll have a nice day.
You are watching NTA, Nigerian Television Authority. For more information and news updates, visit our website at www.nta.ng, or you can follow us on Twitter at NTA News Now, or you can like us on Facebook at NTA Network News. Stay connected on our YouTube channel at www.youtube.com/NTA News Online. Watch our live stream at www.nta.ng/live. NTA, you can't beat the rich.
NTAE brings you the best of entertainment.
I thought I was being sarcastic.
I went on to do other productions.
Everything music.
Hear what Rich one is saying.
If you look at the platforms for a particular product,
they call a new school playing.
That's in the hot or we carry
the hair go and
got the smell.
Somebody sad, you feel it.
I love you.
Just a little. I love this. Chop, they are already washed.
It is all a mindset.
Delicious.
To a president.
They depended on Jesus. What else can I do? Get a shower couple and dancers.
Watch these programs and more on NTA Entertainment Channel 105 on Star Times. NTAE, your one-stop entertainment channel.
Oh na na, what's the name? Oh na na, what's the name?
Sneakers is a synonym for athletic shoes, the generic name for footwear primarily designed for physical exercise. It is usually designed with flexible sole made of rubber and an upper part of leather or canvas.